Hi, I'm Richard Battaglia from the John Arrow Group here, and this is Hancock Park Conversation Part 1. I'm sitting here with Mary Pickhardt. She's a mover and shaker in Windsor Square in Hancock Park.
No, I'm not so sure about that.
I see you shaking.
That's right, I'm shaking now.
These are a series of informal conversations with notables in the Hancock Park area, and we just started this conversation, and Mary's been very important to the preservation, especially of Hancock Park and Windsor Square, so I thought I'd start with the best. And I just wanted to say, Mary, how we met, which is what I like to do, and I think it was because I actually met your husband first. You're married to Paul Newman, which a lot of people don't know, but it's not the...
Well, he thinks he is the Paul Newman.
But it's not the Paul Newman, the late Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward.
No,
it's
no.
some other Paul Newman, yes. And you have been living in Windsor Square how long?
We've lived here for 16 years, and before that we lived over on Orange Drive in a duplex. And before that, we lived over on Blackburn near Fairfax. So we've been in the mid-Wilshire area for as long as we've been married, which is 30 years.
30 years, right.
And have watched the neighborhood grow and change, over that period of time.
And Mary has two lovely children who went to all the area schools here.
Two perfect children.
Perfect children, that's not from that. And what attracted you to this neighborhood?
Well, I had gone to architecture school at UCLA, and I had been working in a large firm downtown. And it turned out that working in corporate architecture and being a mother is really not compatible. And as I started working with having children and then working with some of my friends that I'd met who were starting to move to this area because there was such a great value in these homes, they needed an architect. So that's how it started, very informally, working on these old homes that had been frozen in time.
Yeah, thank God.
Really, thank God, because this was not such a desirable neighborhood.
And what year was this about?
This would have been around the late 80s,
1980s.
And the prices were very low.
I remember.
And
although it was a seller's market then. I remember we bought that house on Norton.
Right, right. There was some, well, in Norton you had a great house, but it was curious that through all those years, very few things had been done to these homes because they had only had one or two owners. And it was a different time and a different lifestyle. So I felt very fortunate to kind of move into this area gradually and meet people who wanted to do the right thing and were making a commitment to the house to really spend a lot of money to bring these homes up to what they were originally. So that's kind of the beginning of it.
And this is one of the prettiest homes in Windsor Square, and it has a little history. You bought it from another notable's mother.
Yes, well, what I didn't realize is that everybody knows everybody in the neighborhood, for better or worse, and I always say that that's what keeps us all on our best behavior. But John Wellborn, whose grandparents were from here, and he grew up on Windsor, and then his family moved to this house, which is one of the few one-story houses in the neighborhood. It's very rare to have a one-story house. He had gotten married and was going to move to a house on Plymouth, so he put this house up for sale. And a client of mine brought me over here to look at it, and as I was walking around looking at it, I'm thinking, that's not the house for you, this is the house for me.
Oh, nice.
But it took a while to talk my husband into moving over here.
Really? Why?
Because he didn't think it was very safe.
Oh, I see. And it's funny, because that's one of the questions.
Yeah.
The eastern boundary, I know when we came to the neighborhood in '89, Norton we bought the worst house in a great neighborhood, and Van Ness was not a good option at that time. And so, I mean, Van Ness is wildly on fire, and then also further east too, like Ridgewood. But the furthest east boundary, what do you think it was?
Well, I don't think in terms of that, but I think people were thinking Wilton or something, but this was around 1995, 96, and remember there was an earthquake, there was all that civil unrest, there were a lot of problems. So you just, it kind of gave you pause to think, really, moving back in the middle of the city isn't it a little scary?
Right, exactly.
But it isn't, and it wasn't, although I have to unfortunately report that the first night that we moved into this house, our car was broken into.
it was good luck then. It was like
which
kicking the tires.
completely validated my husband's suspicions.
And you put the house on the market immediately afterwards,
I
right?
said, no, that was just a fluke. It was, and it was a fluke. That's the only thing that's happened.
Now I want to talk a little bit about the HPOZ, which you are synonymous with, especially in Windsor Square, since you are the one who actually initiated it. And I became one of the fans who jumped in and became part of that Go HPOZ guerrilla warfare team, and it certainly paid off. And because of Mary's efforts, we were able to have a Hancock Park and HPOZ in Windsor Village, and this other one here, the new one over there.
Yeah, there's a whole, now they're all around us, but at the time when we started initiating this, it was really in the late 90s.
That's right.
And other neighborhoods that had it were more like Angelino Heights, you know, Victorian, or around USC, which was really a different kind of architecture. And the ordinance was originally designed for much more depressed neighborhoods. This is not a depressed neighborhood.
Exactly.
And because it was so beautiful, people thought, what? There is no problem here. Why would we want to do it? But it was just developing that culture of preservation where we want to save it while it's good.
Yes.
And we had the examples of what had happened in Santa Monica and then in Beverly Hills, and it was all starting to come east. And it became very evident to people who were working in real estate and design and construction that this neighborhood was next.
It needs to be
needed
preserved.
some kind of, it isn't freezing it in time, but the idea that change is good, but you want to manage change at a neighborhood level. You can't rely on building and safety with, you know, the enormous city to be able to give special attention to these little neighborhoods.
I got so involved in that, as you know, and I just was so...
You were a warrior.
I was a warrior! I was such a warrior! And no, it was amazing to see everyone falling into the same consciousness about it, and I was always so perplexed that there was even one person that was against it, and all those numerous meetings we all went to downtown, just listening to the opposition, and luckily everyone remained friends, because some of your friends were not completely on board.
Yeah, I was kind of blindsided by it too, because it just seemed like a simple thing. Of course we want to do this, but you know, you come up against a peculiar kind of American quality. It's like my home, and I can do whatever I want, and it's all fine. And that whole idea of one person's property value is really dependent on the character of the street and the scale and the proportion.
Absolutely.
And we realized that there was kind of a learning curve that had to go on in the community about how this neighborhood was originally designed and what attracted everybody to it in the first place.
And it was a fast learning curve. We
It
had to
was
like
a
really
fast learning
educate everybody to that, yeah.
But it is an amazing neighborhood, and it did have people really step back and look at what they value in the community. And I think that's what ultimately, you know, kind of pushed it over the top. But it still took, Richard, if you may recall, 6 years.
Was it 6 years? I remember anyone who's on the opposition, I would say, you know, if you don't want to hear, just go. Do you ever go east of Western Boulevard and see, you know, what's happened there over the years? Or it just was amazing to me. A lot of good people on both sides of it, and yes, I bang into some of them. And it's, you know, we're very friendly, but it got contentious at some few points, as I recall.
As I recall, but and people contended that if there are too many restrictions on a property, that the property value will go down. And there really wasn't enough data to support what we all had suspected. It's like, no, this will preserve the property value. But the numbers, especially with the downturn in the economy, this area has held its value proportionately larger to other communities that don't have this kind of protection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that, you know, unfortunately, it's a terrible way to make a point, but
no, you know,
that's made a big difference.
It was. I always also said that, you know, it's amazing people would come to this neighborhood. People actually sometimes stumble onto Hancock Park and Windsor Square and Larchmont Village, and when they do, they're so surprised with Larchmont Village and the streets of all the stores. And then I used to say, yeah, people would come here and say, oh, this is a great neighborhood, I love all these charming homes, let me tear it down. You know, so Thank God we got the HPC
Well,
involved.
the other thing too that I learned as an architect is that building and safety only reviews something to see if it's safe. So you could propose a teepee on a 20,000 square foot teepee, and if it met all the structural codes and all the zoning, height restrictions, you can do it. So you do need to have design review, especially in these architecturally significant communities where these homes were beautifully designed and beautifully built. It's hard to improve on at least the facades of these homes. The interiors, of course, have to be updated, but also the scale and proportion of the house in relation to the lot. And these are huge lots.
Yeah.
So you could build, in other parts of the city, you could build 20,000 square foot house.
Lot,
Yeah.
On the entire, and some people have
Yeah,
done
and
that
they
also.
have.
Crazy.
So anyway, but that was part of the learning curve of what we had to understand, who can manage what, and we realized that it was really up to us.
The community.
The community.
From the grassroots level.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. And they work beautifully.
It did work, and it's
really
working
nice.
better and better as people have lived here and they see the value of preservation, because eventually all these homes change hands. So you really want the next generation to enjoy the feeling, and it's hard to be abstract, but the feeling of this community, and that's preserved in the architecture and the landscape.